the event. Louder. I'll try. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming. I want to give you a quick update on some of the things that the Sustainability Council is working on before I introduce Brendan. I also, of course, always have to start by thanking our sponsors. Thanks to Creekside. Kelly's in the kitchen, of course, but she's missing. Talking Green event at Creekside, and we really appreciate it. And you know, Annie and I were just talking about this before, that these guys walk the walk for sure. They're zero waste. They have as much local food as you possibly can here. So we appreciate you being here, and we're so glad to be associated with you. Thank you. Our other sponsors for Talking Green are All Season Financial, HomeLink, and Resources. So thanks to them as well. Coming up, February Talking Green will be Sam Jones, and I don't know if anybody, a couple years ago he did clean technology, green technology, financials, and investing, and so that was our 101 on green technology, and he'll be doing a 201, and that will be at Paramount on February 25th. We also have our March Talking Green, which will be on March 25th, and it will be at Library Hall, and we're really excited to partner with the library and the CMC to bring George Werthner. And he is kind of a world-famous ecologist, and he has written on a huge amount of issues, from fire ecology to oil and gas drilling and he'll be speaking on the 25th about predator relationships. So that's super interesting, wolves specifically, but he's an amazing speaker, an amazing author, ecologist, so we're really excited to bring him here. So March 25th. Okay, other things coming up. Marcia, do you want to... Could I have this one? Yes. So this is Marcia Beckenwall with Community Ag Alliance. I stuck myself way back here in the corner. I apologize for that. As most of you know, water is a huge issue in this community throughout northwest Colorado. And actually the Yampa River and the Colorado rivers do have a target on their back from the east slope. The governor has decreed that by December of 2015, there is to be a statewide water plan. And what has happened with that is he's asked each of the basins, the 7 river basins in Colorado, to come up with their own individual plan of what they think is important for their area. And each of them are to submit that in, and then it will be submitted into a statewide water plan. So the Yampa White Green Roundtable is holding a series of public meetings in February. It's one meeting, 4 different locations, but they're also opening up their 4 of their roundtable meetings for public input on the basic implementation plan. I'm going to pass these cards around, and if you are interested in all 4 dates and locations are listed on there. The one for Steamboat happens to be February 13th. But it's a good opportunity to come, hear what is being offered, the studies and analysis that have been done in the Yampa River Basin and the Green River Basin and the White River Basin, and then find out how they have your input. For those of you that are with organizations, I would really ask you to take it back to your organization and have that conversation about whether or not you should have some input, whether it is recreation or food or the environment or human services. Think about what would happen if we lose the Yampa River and all the water that goes with it. So we certainly invite you to come, and thank you, Sarah. And if there's cards left over at the end, can I get them back? Thanks, Marcia. Because I want to introduce Brendan, but I have a little story to tell to explain why he's here today.
Thank you.
So I know some of you, and some of you know kind of my history, but for those of you who don't, I grew up in New Hampshire, and I had a father who was sure the world was coming to an end, and so we essentially were off-grid. Not totally, but we heated only with wood. We go through about 20 cords of wood a year. We raised almost all of our own food, and my mother, my poor mother, who kind of got dragged along, and the kids who got dragged along, I experienced that for my whole life growing up. And so that's kind of how I got into sustainability. familiar, how I found that it was a point. And I must have written about this in an article or something. And Mike McCrann, who is volunteer extraordinaire, read the article and came to me and he said, "You really need to meet my son." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cute." And he whatever. Like I kind of missed it. I was like, "Yeah, that's great." And then Mike sent me a blog post and a TED Talk link talking about food waste. Not Brendan's TED Talk, but they were linked. The TED Talk and Brendan's blog were linked. And Andy and Carol, Emily, those of us at YDSC saw, and Marcia, we saw the TED Talk, we read Brendan's blog, and we kind of were like, we are such idiots. So we've been working on zero waste and waste diversion and reducing waste in our valley. We've also been working on local food, and we never, all that work that we've been doing, never put these two conversations together. And so it was kind of, okay, I was like, okay, maybe Mike's right. Maybe I should talk to Brendan. And so we started with that, and then, now we're so excited to have Brendan up to talk about the work that he's doing, and kind of this concept of connecting these two things. So this is Brendan. Brendan has been in Colorado for 10 years, and in Denver for much of that time. He's got a master's in nonprofit management, and he worked in Denver on, he was saying, like, you don't really relate to what I'm doing now, but I was like, really? Because he ran a food pantry, and he did outreach for homeless, and he did experiential education at Regis, and I was like, yeah, that feels like that really ties into the work that you're doing. I'm going to let him talk about Future Pointe, his business, but Brendan, welcome, and we're really, really glad to have you and really kind of start this conversation.
Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction. I'm Brendan, and I'm here tonight to talk about Future Pointe. And I'm here with my business partner, Philip Griffith, and with a really important partner to our business, Julia Hershey. And Philip is my business partner. He's the visionary of our business. He's my mentor. And so I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about the work we're doing together with Future Pointe. Thanks to YDSC and to Sarah for this opportunity. Thanks to everyone who's come. We're competing tonight with the State of the Union address, as I'm sure you all know. So thanks for giving this a little bit of priority.
Sorry. Water. Wait,
okay.
Water.
Water. Oh no. Oh no. It goes to the end, but don't worry about So, in talking about Future Pointe, what we want to talk about tonight is really the discovery that we've had around touching waste, and how much of that, just having some exposure to different types of waste in our community. We're in the Colorado Springs area. How that's given us imagination and hope around a number of other things that are relevant in our community that energize us, namely growth and transformation and development with people, work, experience, etc., and agriculture at different scales. And so we're using waste as a lens to understand what's possible in terms of integration. So that's the model that we're working on. Waste has made the last 4 years of our work, of our experimentation possible. And so tonight, we're just excited to show some photographs of people, agriculture, and waste coming together in the work we're doing, and to talk a little bit about just the narrative, the story that's unfolding for us. There's no conclusions. It's just a story through the lens of waste. So the the photos that I'm going to show and some of them I'm going to talk about, it's pretty difficult to figure out how to tell the story. There's so many different things happening at once, and so bear with me around it. And if you would just hold your questions till the end, and I hope that this follows some pattern so that so that you can experience some of the excitement that we have around this work. Can everybody see?
No.
So the story for us, for Future Point, begins at Care and Share, which is a Feeding America food bank, a large food bank, one of 200 and somewhere around 212 nationwide. It's located in Colorado Springs. It serves the southern Colorado region. Its peer is the Food Bank of the Rockies out of Denver. And the story begins here for Future Point because when we started 4 years ago and began experimenting with some activities in local agriculture and some activities in zero waste and some recycling, Care and Share invited us to come and do a zero waste consultation. And so that's been a launch pad for Future Point and has served us as we move forward. And so our work begins with Care and Share. We did a zero waste consultation that revealed this this challenge of theirs that's somewhat prolific of food waste. That there's all kinds of food material coming through their warehouse facility that has been sort of deemed undistributable. It's the packaging's damaged or illegible. It's dated. Cans are dented. For whatever reason, it wasn't going to go out to people. And so this was the main challenge that emerged from our consultation. And so our work began by taking on the opportunity to look for a solution with Care and Share. And so that's why the slide begins there. That's where this really launches. But also, this begins a story of trying to follow the cycle of some food waste. And so here's our truck and our trailer backed up to Care and Share to haul away somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds of food a week. And so that's where it begins for us. And we're going to follow that food as a way of describing this story of our learning how to do this work. In an early iteration of our work with Care and Share, as we've experimented with different methods of working this food, Care and Share delivered it in one of their trucks an hour east of town to a 50,000-acre ranch where we had a 40-acre homestead sort of donated to us to experiment. So this image is of the zero waste coordinator at Care and Share. His name's Randy, and he's driven this truck out with 6 to 8 cubic yards of canned food, breads, pastries, rices, grains, all sorts of food, and dropping it off at this farm. And we started at this farm property 2 years ago in order to receive this food and begin to convert it into something new. And the farm itself had been unoccupied for about 10 years, so there was a lot of work to do to get ready. And we didn't really have any experience with farming either. So it's just pure learning curve. And so it's how do I fence, but also what am I going to do about this 4,000 pounds of food today? And so the work began, or continued, I guess. Another image of food being delivered with the farmhouse in the background. This is eastern Colorado. This is due east of Colorado Springs. It's in an area of the state that it feels a lot like Kansas or Nebraska. It's the sort of high desert plains, and all around us there's cattle ranching happening, and we're in this small homestead that, as I said, was unutilized, and so this is food arriving, and and we borrowed a piece of equipment from the neighbor to make this happen early on. This is Philip, and this is one of our very first activities, getting deep into this food and trying to figure out what on earth are we dealing with here. What are the categories? So the sorting began, and it's just a number of iterations of chaos that we've related around. And so here we are out at the ranch dealing with these totes that are filled with cans or filled with a number of other food items, and starting to experiment with what can we do now. The vision at this point was to stabilize this farm and to start bringing animals onto the farm, compost, grow food. But as things unfolded, it doesn't unfold neatly like that. There was urgency because the food was arriving and we're building the farm in parallel. But this is a good thing to see for me because we've come a long way. Moving here around the product. As you can imagine, very quickly we realized that we needed help and we needed more hands on deck to experiment with this food and to build this farm. And so early on we worked with Karen Shear to do some fundraising to secure a tractor for the property, a skid steer, that would allow us to work easier with this food and move soil around. And this is a business in Colorado Springs, or some representatives of a business that made a contribution toward that end. They were interested in the project, and they came out and worked with us for a day, which was our first real introduction to what's it going to look like to get other people really engaged in this work. And how do we take all this chaos that we're experiencing and shrink it down and make it tangible and systematic and workable so that it can feel good for other people, because we need other people. It's part of our model. And so here we were with a group spending the day opening cereal and pasta and rice and beans, all this strange work, and starting to experiment with systems for people. I really didn't want to put a photograph of myself in this, but I'm wearing a Steamboat Springs t-shirt. It's another kind of closed loop. But before the skid steer arrived, we had to drop the food off and leave it where it was and work it there because we couldn't move it around. And so I decided to set up the office as close to the house as possible, and we had to eliminate this food as it kept coming and kept coming. And so here we were, a couple 100 yards from our first compost pile set up there, just emptying things into wheelbarrows and hauling them up. And so now we began to work it into the soil a little bit. And although it's a little out of sequence, the skid steer did come shortly thereafter, and we were able to move forward a little bit more effectively.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe this is having the opposite effect I had. Right now at Karen Shear, just to give you an idea of how this is sort of never-ending for an agency like this, and it's happening all over the country. They had to shut down for inventory, as a warehouse needs to, and in 1 week's time they accumulated close to 35 of these boxes of just breads and pastries. And it kept coming. So they open back up and they have to work with the inventory that they know is going to move and it's freshest. And so what does a nonprofit agency that's trying to move food out to people do with 35 cubic yards of donuts and loaves of bread? In many cases that haven't yet really turned, that are still good. This is the challenge that they're faced with, that we're learning about, and this is why it's been so important for us to partner together, and why it's been so exciting to be in the position of receiving this at a farm and going right to soil. Now, at this stage that this arrived, we didn't have animals to consume this. And so we're unpackaging and unfurling this out there on the farm and thinking how strange our lives have become. There's not a lot of perishable food that we're receiving. In most cases it's boxed or it's bagged or it's canned. But this is also some of the challenge that they're facing. There's an open-faced barn on the property, at this farm property that we've been developing, and when we arrived, this is the inside of that barn. When we arrived, it was filled with 10 years worth of tumbleweeds and farm equipment and corrugated roof material that had blown off. And so we started to get, in this barn space, we started to get in touch with the kind of transformation that could happen or that was necessary to repurpose land, wasted infrastructure and wasted land, and start to move this stuff out. And just like we've been doing with the food, sort it. We got wood, we got metal, we had all sorts of plastic farm implements that we couldn't identify. And did this sorting process and started to ask ourselves questions about what's facing the agricultural community around this kind of material, and how can they leverage this to move forward. So as we cleared this out, we moved our food in and started to set up some organization. Still just beginning to go to compost with this. This is another part of the property where we're preparing for pigs. Up in this, there's a sort of a feed room, a tack room, and we're beginning to prepare for pigs. And this image shows a group of young people who've come out from the city to work with us. For about for the 4 years and even longer, we've been involved with this nonprofit agency in Colorado Springs called the Dale House Project. And it's a residential facility for youth who are either transitioning out of the corrections department or have come through the Department of Human Services in some capacity. And the Dale House Project is aimed at creating opportunities for these young people to build new skills, stabilize, feel cared about, establish new patterns in their life. And early on, we worked to build a garden with them in the city. And our programs evolved with the Dale House, and we started offering what we call a learning laboratory for life, and try and put curriculum around our work. So there's all these things that we can learn from, and that we can work on together, and trying to figure out how can we create some real tangible growth just working together. And they've been excited about that. So excited that 1 to 2 days a week, they come wherever we are and we work together. And this is 3 residents of that organization and a supervisor, and they come out, and it's a totally foreign environment, not just because it's a farm, but because there's all of this strange activity happening, and they're piecing it together, and that feels good, and we're getting things done together. So we're processing food here and going to compost. This is just a shot of candy in a box, and trying to give a glimpse of all the different kinds of waste food that accumulates in some ways at the end of the line at a major food bank that they're having to come up with solutions for. And not in every case have we been able to manage this, but that's the role we're playing, is to take the candy, stand on it, work with it, get in touch with it, and figure out what are we going to do here. What's the best solution? A couple more glimpses of the candy. Each of these weighs about 1,000 pounds. They contain about 750 to 800 individual cans of food. In many cases, the damage to them or the way that they've been compromised is unrecognizable or without consequence. And so there's all of this food product coming to us. It's coming to us still today. This is early on. And this is during a research process of opening things. This is our first compost pile. It's filled with pasta and breads and flour and horse manure from the city. As part of our transportation back and forth, we've been in close partnership with Julia's business, which is a inner city horse ranch, a boarding facility that has anywhere between 8 and 12 horses on site at any time, and there's a lot of waste output there. And so that's, as part of our partnership, that's headed out when it's possible, and we're working that into our compost, into our growing medium. And simultaneously, building a stronger partnership in the city around someone else's waste. And in the background here are a couple more Dale House residents working on the compost. A couple more folks from Dale House introducing the compost a month or two down the road into a vermiculture bin, experimenting with worms. And as you can imagine, the kind of things we're adding to this at this stage, tomatoes and peaches and all kinds of food waste. It was a vibrant atmosphere for worms. And it's fun to describe to 19-year-olds from the inner city why you would want worms and what you would be doing with worms. And this is all just at a small scale, and we're experimenting with how we're dealing with this waste. This is a recent photograph of a compost pile and about 500 pounds of potatoes that came out of Care and Share because they're just about to turn. And if you've ever smelled potatoes that are just about to turn, it's about to get real bad. So they got to move them through this warehouse. We haul them away. We open them up onto the compost pile. They get covered, and if they seed, then perfect. And if they don't, we still move forward. And so I just think it's a good image of the kind of abundance that is happening around this waste food. And this is just one place with one waste stream. And it's a heavy burden on it. So the compost has happened at this stage, and we're constructing our garden at this farm, but we wanted to feel really good and inspired about all this work we've done to get this food into compost. So we installed our first little garden bed to grow some kale at the house, and this is a photo of that. And this was stage one of growing food, using some of this compost medium, using a lot of the horse manure, and started to grow food out at this farm. And this is as we're breaking ground on a 25 by 75 garden plot out across from the house, as you can see. And it's pretty sandy soil. You can tell it's not very dark, but it's nutrient rich. It's had a lot of material die on it over the years, and as we introduced our soil medium to the picture, it continued to evolve, got some fencing up, a little bit of irrigation. This is a friend of ours from the city who has some permaculture background, offered to come out and do some seeding. All the while we're working this food in parallel with trying to create close that gap a little bit and feel the energy around new food as a result of it. This is the garden this last summer in its second growing season, and these are 3 Regis University students from Denver who were participating in a sort of a homesteading program for a couple of months where they came and lived at the farm. They processed food waste, they worked compost, they planted gardens, they worked with our animals, and this is their first experience of growing food in a garden, and we, you know, it was a beautiful experience to see them connecting it to these other pieces. It wasn't just simply seeding a garden, but it was closing some of these gaps and seeing how they worked with that. This is a garden space in Colorado Springs. This is at the Dale House. We worked together on this starting in 2009, 2010, and we all learned together. And this is where the Learning Laboratory really got its root. This program of trying to intentionalize the working process happened for all of us here, because none of us knew what it really looked like to build soil, to make it beautiful, to seed gardens, to water, to weed, to harvest, to go to market. And so this is a finished product that we worked with the Dale House and have gone to market on. And you know, in many ways this informed or gave confidence around trying to do this at a larger scale at the farm. Dale House residents working in their garden. And this is back to the garden at the farm, and you can see that it's beginning to grow, and we're having some success around this soil. It's starting to enjoy sort of the fruits of the labor. As I mentioned, the Dale House comes out to where we're working, and they came out this past summer, and they wanted to supplement their harvest when they went to market in the city. And so we started to provide some food from this garden space at a very small scale, just to continue to experiment with the integration that's possible between the country and the city. And also just to create more rich activities for us to learn together and how to talk about the exchange around, the value exchange around food and what it takes to take ownership in it. So this is all very exciting. This is some harvest out of our garden. And I guess it's just important to note that there's no real expertise around this except just to do it. And so that's what's been so profound to me, is that we just work together, a whole bunch of us, and we enlist advisors when we can. We move forward based on the principles we're aware of, and we have results. And we're working together, and we feel really good about it. And so, not to be too touchy-feely about it, but it goes back into that's the ethos that we're trying to create, and that's the kind of energy that will keep people at the table with us doing this work, which is so necessary at this stage as we're trying to develop a solution that has some economic trajectory, has some curriculum trajectory. But it's important to stop and just see that we can do this, and there are results. This is one of the structures out at the farm that was sort of in disrepair. And we worked with the Dale House to do a little demolition, to pull apart a few pallets, to find some old chicken wire material. We reinforced this thing together in preparation to bring chickens in, which is our first experiment with animals. Our chickens arrived. We fed our chickens food out of the cans, corn, peas, and tuna, and they laid eggs, and it was pure magic. It's been so helpful to do this in these little moments, in all these little stages, especially for me at this point in my life, to learn how to do this incrementally and to be mentored around that, and to actually be able to be excited, like somehow my career has just plateaued because a chicken laid an egg. It is that simple. It is that powerful. But these were our first animals at the farm. We had composted, we had gardened, we had some food coming out. We're still working with people. We're getting better with the food, and we installed the chickens. And then I knew it. Some friends that we had come in contact with, or some friends we had made east of town, bred these pigs for us and helped us understand what we were going to need to do around fencing and around water and around feed, just to begin. Now we have changed our fencing, our water, our feeding process. You name how we move things. We have changed dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and that's part of, I guess, that's part of the learning experience around this in general. Is that there's actually some great resonance between agriculture and waste and working with people that you can't really expect anything to move forward as planned. But everything went as planned here. This is a litter of piglets that would begin to consume our food at this property. And we had an opportunity to experiment with some recipes of all this food, with milk and fruit and vegetables, with rices and grains and beans. And we've been working with some other pig farmers to see how it took so that we could be ready for this as our herd growth. And it has been wildly successful. They're fascinating creatures. And this is when this is the first meal at our farm. And these pigs have just grown rapidly. They're healthy and intelligent, and it gives us purpose around this food. That was really important as we've been working this and working this and working this. And now we're feeding something, and it feels there's a hospitality component in it, and we've really bonded with these pigs in this cycle that we're experiencing. And I think for us, this was a huge momentous event to have our pigs come, and they've done nothing but grow. And people come to see them, people come to feed. It's added new energy to the work, and it doesn't matter where people come from to work with us, this is a real common ground, because this becomes our purpose in some ways. Is we're going to take this old food that was headed to the landfill, we're going to turn it into new food, and we're going to experience some relationship with each other and with these animals in the process. This photograph is of a member of a board in the Colorado Springs area who has supported our work by supporting Care and Share and helping to add capacity to this program, this zero waste program that they're working with FuturePoint on. And he brought his son out to come and see the sort of the end product of it, or to be a part of that. Just a few short months had passed, and we had 450-pound pigs, and they're growing, they're eating, we're getting better and better at our process. We've established kind of a feed room at our farm here, and we're opening a couple thousand cans a week with a few electric can openers, and experimenting with our recipes and trying to ask questions about what's it going to look like to systematize this, and to take all this, it's just chaos down the line, and make this accessible to other people too, so that this can continue. But of course, we had to go full cycle. I chose, of all the photographs of this process, I chose what I felt was going to be the easiest to handle. None of us had really ever done this before. I certainly hadn't, but this is a friend who had been working with us for a year, named Devin and Philip, and we went through sort of a convocation process, and then we butchered this pig on site. And we fed at 8, we hauled this pig away at 9, we commenced the process, and at noon we all ate together. And it was, for me, it was a really profound experience. And experiencing this at this small scale, and actually seeing how this can all come together between the waste and the food and all the work that went into these pigs, again, a real momentous event for us. This is a photograph of on the far left, the couple that bred the pigs for us and have been important advisors. And on the far right, Regis University students who participate in that program over the summer. We launched the program with a barbecue, and Cheston on the far left, who's Hawaiian, buried a pig and roasted it Hawaiian style on site. We had about 75 folks come out and enjoy a barbecue, and had an opportunity to bring more people and around this farm and around this process that, again, we hadn't, not necessarily like we had discovered any solution yet, but we were working it, and people were energized by it, and we stopped and enjoyed the fruits of the work. So that sort of concludes the part of the process, or the part of the presentation where we tell the story of the food, to the farm, to the soil, to the garden, to the chickens, to the hogs, and there's some cycle there. This is the back haul. We open all these cans, and we fill totes back up with empty cans, empty steel cans. We've got cardboard, we've got plastics, glasses, aluminum. There's all this waste product that's arriving at the farm and storing up in these boxes. And so we began experimenting with how we're going to get this back into the city, and what does it look like to close this loop. This is a 12-yard dump bed trailer filled with cans. Each of these totes of cans is about $10 in scrap steel. And so at this point, we're looking at how can we integrate around our transportation and our backhaul and our storage such that we're covering our fuel at least. We're getting in touch with the recycle marketplace, the commodities field, and doing this new research. So there's a tremendous amount of action research, and then there's also the real kind of hard data research that needed to happen around this. But there was no delay on it because the material existed and was building up on a farm without the kind of infrastructure where it could be secured. So we got in touch with raccoons, coyotes, bats, and the list goes on, and high winds
Rattlesnakes.
Rattlesnakes, lots of rattlesnakes.
Mice.
Yeah, so the mice came for this feast of almost empty cans, but not completely empty cans, and the rattlesnakes came for the mice. And so the challenge of doing this recycling process, this waste process out at the farm, looking at what does it mean to be a small-scale farm and to be benefiting from all of this food waste, and to actually do right by the full process and be zero waste. And this is where that conversation process began. This is just scrap steel from around the property that we were able to include in some of our back hauling, and you start to get exposed to how challenging the waste of a ranch or of a farmstead is just on site. And there's decades and decades and generations of roofing material, fencing material, barbed wire, tire rims. And so we included that in our process as a way of closing that loop too. On our way back into town, we passed through Rush, Colorado. There's not even a blinking light there. It is just a couple of businesses that you pass by. And Philip started to not network, but started to stop at these places and talk with these business owners about the kind of recycling they had, and whether or not we could integrate around their recycling as we were doing our transportation. And so this is us hauling plastics, glass, plastic bags, and cardboard back in town. We stop at Rush Cafe and we follow up on a lead that Phillips cultivated there to take their cardboard. And so we're pulling cardboard out of their basement, and that began the sort of the inquiry around what can you do with cardboard. It's clean, it's easy to move, anybody can do it, it stacks well, but is there a market for it? Does it make sense? And can we integrate around our neighbors and these businesses along the way and just create more and more energy around this work? And this is us doing it with the Regis University students as part of our weekly backhaul. So this is a 16 cubic yard dump bed trailer filled with cardboard in the city. So this process of collecting cardboard has now evolved into, when we're back in town 1 day a week to collect our food, we're at a stage now where we're hauling the food from Care and Share. When we go in to get it, we spend the day hauling cardboard at a variety of accounts in the city, trying to learn whether or not there's economic trajectory around that. There's definitely learning lab for life trajectory around it, because we learn how to systematically work together and set our roles, fill a truck, cover it up, take it to the recycling facility. So the experimentation continues, and now it's moved away from food, but as a way of we're subsidizing the activities of the food processing in this stage, and looking at what it looks like to be a zero waste hauler for small businesses and agencies. With all these people coming to the farm, we started to be confronted with questions of where are people going to stay and how are they going to be comfortable and taken care of, and how do we conserve water, and what's the restroom facilities for people, and where do guests stay. And so a neighboring ranch had platform tents that we disassembled and set up at the farm. We set up one as a guest house, and this allowed us to have more people out at the ranch, out at the farm over the last 6 or 8 months to do this work. And it was also a building process with people. These are the Regis University students assembling what would become a composting outhouse on the facility out of old barnwood. And we just trying to establish this site as a place where people could come and work and be comfortable and feel energized. So the shift here that I'm making is away from the farm and the food and the pigs that we just demonstrated and illustrated in those photos. And there's a piece of property between Colorado Springs and this farm that belongs to Julia and her family. And they made it available to us to experiment with composting there and homesteading there, and to begin to build a little bit more stability along this urban-rural continuum. And so we've, as the farm is slowly stabilized, or the vision is to stabilize the farm, we're now experimenting with being in what they call, I think, the exurbs, or it's sort of just on the edge of the suburbs before you get out into rural, and looking at what it looks like to warehouse in this area and to homestead in this area, and grow our capacity around our waste interception and our work of this food with stronger proximity to the city. And so this is a place that we're occupying right now in order to make use of a 30,000 square foot abandoned warehouse space in the same town that is perfectly beyond repair for us, or is in disrepair, and allows for all this imagination of storage and security and recycling and commodities, and what it looks like to be building the business around this waste interception with stronger and stronger capacity. So right now, we're spending time 35 miles outside of the city processing all of this food and turning it into recipes and selling to a couple of little pig farm partners that we've got, composting on site, and trying to grow in that way, and still feeding our farm. In order to do that work and to have that help, we've got the Dale House out with us once again, and they wanted to set up their own space and to establish sort of their own processing center. And so we've got a military tent on site. This is going to look post-apocalyptic, but I assure you, this is our new space for innovation. And we're working with teams and with groups in this tent, and we're experimenting with the inside of this warehouse, which has tremendous storage capacity and gives us a roof, protects us from the wind and the coyotes. It's a real step forward. And we're still in touch with what it looks like to take on a property that no one else will take on. And that keeps us nimble, and it keeps us asking hard questions. The inside of the warehouse is sort of skeletal and bare bones, but again, it's a step forward, and we're storing food up in there, and we're experimenting with how to best utilize this space and best serve our farm, best serve our neighbors' farms, best serve the people who are working with us, and we've got folks volunteering with us in the warehouse space. And where we've arrived at now, after all that experimentation, after the totes getting dropped off at the farm, and this intense learning curve, which continues but is morphed into new challenges, is we're cleaning Dunkin' Donuts buckets that come out of Dunkin' Donuts dumpsters in town and filling them with rice, beans, pasta, snack, fruits, vegetables, milk, and it's going out from there and feeding animals and being composted into soil. And so there's the integration around this and the growth around this continues to happen. So I conclude on this photograph because in many ways it represents where we've arrived at now, and this is the final product. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what's your 5-year vision for this?
The vision for our work is to continue integrating around agriculture, waste, and people incrementally, and it's to include the people we're working with now better and better, to respond to them and build good program around them as we grow, and it's to attract new people. is to do agriculture better and better, and to figure out what it means to grow or scale around this agriculture. But to do it incrementally, so that these things can grow in parallel, and we can maximize our learning, and to continue to experiment with waste interception in the Colorado Springs area, and to continue to do this well, because this connects us to the agricultural community. And more than anything, this is a type of waste that isn't commonly addressed. So it's just more and more of the same, really. We look forward to bringing, as we continue to learn, or as we've learned through a lot of chaos and through a lot of process, a lot of contrast. So we're learning what isn't working or what isn't helpful. That informs what we envision in terms of bringing this all under one roof and being able to stabilize the model, where you've got really good people program, really good ag program, and really good waste interception program that's stabilized under one roof in one location. And from that position of strength, it's based on all we've learned to be in a position to grow around some of these things, and to support other people who are interested in models that look for solutions to difficult problems in their communities.
That's great. Do you handle all the waste for the Caring for Colorado program?
The Care and Share Food Bank?
Care and Share, yeah.
No, we don't. When we started working with Care and Share a few years ago, they had some recycled containers and they had some waste containers, and they were doing their very best. And because waste represented 4% of their overall unused wasted product represented 4% of their overall inventory. And now we estimate it's somewhere around 1%. It costs them somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 a year to manage their waste, and that's been reduced to somewhere between $200 and $300 a month. And some of this is floating, because sometimes you get 35 totes of food and have to call in a roll-off. But we're not really in a position to take everything, but we'd like to be, or we're open to being. But we're learning that taking any of it requires a tremendous amount of patience and diligence and teamwork and communication. And so it's about perfecting that in order to be in a position to say to an agency like Care and Share, maybe we could take it all, and maybe we could work together around the full breadth of this. And most of it is recyclable, or it has potential to be integrated around the farm.
For me, two questions come up. One has to do with water. Where do you get your water, and is it a problem? And the other question is a little more, I guess, philosophical. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by this project? I mean, how do you deal with it? It is so completely over the top. Conceptually, there's so many pieces. How do you even find your way?
Water, easier of the two questions. This piece of land, well, the piece of land that we've been cultivating as a farm for 2 years, there's good groundwater there. There's some springs, and I think I don't know, actually, is the real answer. I don't know. But we have water. We have water, and we're using it sparingly, because it's necessary, and we want to learn what it means to be aware of that. But it is there's not much moisture out there, and the aquifers are being reduced rapidly and at increasingly rapid rates out on the eastern plains, and we don't know how secure these shallow wells are.
We could actually water our gardens just from the water that they throw away. We could water our gardens from just the water that Care and Share throws away.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not a lot of water in our process, but it's just amazing the amount of liquid that one food bank throws away. So, but the properties that we're on have serious water challenges like all of Colorado does. But our process doesn't take that water.
No, it doesn't. And our compost gets a lot of moisture by way of this canned food, or by way of, cases upon cases of apple juice or bottled water even. I mean, we've moisturized our compost piles with purified water, Dasani, because we can. Or we'll water our gardens with it. And so it's it's just a way. I guess for us, it's just a way of trying to think about it. Where can we integrate further and further and further? And what would it look like to be in a relationship with an agency like Care and Share, and we were moving forward with capturing all their gray water or portions of their gray water. The possibilities are sort of endless, but it isn't a top priority at this point. But it is an urgent matter across the East and potentially everywhere, because it's not as simple as there's water here or there's moisture here. To your second question, I could never have imagined. Philip invited me to join him on this vision 4 years ago, and has this rich experience across the globe working with people who are living on the margins, with these agricultural questions and with waste. And he invited me to join, and has been my mentor and my friend around it, and has asked big things of me that I never would have asked of myself, I don't think, or I couldn't have imagined it. And so our work together and our communication together, which then spills out to how we work with other people on good days, does, that we feel good about it. And it's incredibly complex and layered, while at the same, in parallel with being really simple and sort of like, of course. We are only two, and our core team, which includes partners like Julia and some others that are really integral to what we do, we're still only a few, and the vision is big, but there's a tremendous amount of energy in it. And the degree to which we can communicate with each other and to itemize all that needs to be done, to look at it broadly and communicate, there's a degree to which we feel good about it. And the degree to which we take care of each other around what's coming up, because it's hard to totally redefine what it means to be stable or secure around growing. We're growing some food, we're raising some animals. Right now we've got water. We've better haul this steel so that we don't go into debt around our transportation, because diesel's expensive. But the work is good and it's true. And so for me to be exposed to that, I'm motivated to stick it out because we have a good relationship around it, ultimately.
Rennie, you mentioned the hauling the steel back, and I'm trying to work out the economics in my mind. And excuse me if I missed where the money comes from, but I cannot, in my mind, add up the amount of steel and pigs you have and make this thing pencil out, considering what I know your costs must be for insurance, fuel. I hope you're getting some sort of payment. How is that? Where's that coming from?
Well, it's the sort of economic model, which has been a survival model in order to make a lot of things true from the ground up, has included the basic kinds of expenses, and then we're trying to imagine in as many ways as possible how to use integration around our work to make a little bit here, how to bring it together little by little by little. So a tote of cans, $10. A full trailer of cardboard, $85. Covering fuel consistently, that's our biggest expense. And we have program fees associated with our work with people, and we hope that as we continue to dialogue around our work with people and hang in there with our clients, and they hang in there with us, we get better and better at turning our work into curriculum, and they are more and more willing to pay program fees. we're not interested in getting paid to put people to work. We're interested in getting paid to experience development together. And so there's an economy around that. The food itself and its potential to turn into be turned into soil and be turned into new food. It's an economy in and of itself. But a different type of economy. So we look at how are we optimizing our work around this food so that we're eating fresh vegetables all summer. Not just because it sounds cool and it looks cool and the photos are beautiful, because we need to eat, and so it's where we're not spending money that we're integrating on our work, that we're able to continue to move forward and thrive. And it really does feel like we're thriving. We have relationships with generous people who make land available, who make transportation available, who give us opportunities to work in, for instance, working at Julia's barn and playing a role there that actually integrates with our securing the manure. See, so it's looking at the broad landscape and finding ways to close those gaps. Now, we believe there's economic trajectory around people program. There's economic trajectory around waste, where companies are getting paid to pick up waste and then getting paid if they're capable of sorting it out, and the degree to which they can sort into these categories, they can commoditize. They can go ahead and sell on the open market if you can store up enough, et cetera. Looking at how that might fit into our model, but looking at it very carefully, so not to all of a sudden be mortgaged to an account that you got to be at every day. And these are things that it's helpful to be working together and dialoguing around where someone has experience with that. The pigs represent an opportunity to enterprise and to create custom pork. The vegetables represent an opportunity to go to market. That requires that we can attract more and more people to the work who are leaders and who can say, I want to do this with you, and I'd like to take this to market. And I'm open to participating in the broader thing. So we feel really confident about our ability to make the numbers work as we move. And we have a strong baseline because we're surviving, and we have good relationships with folks.
Let me just say one more thing about that, and that is, if we knew when we started what we know now, we could have gone to Care & Share and we could have said, you're spending, because they're actually spending $10,000 to $15,000 a year on their waste, and they weren't making any money on their cardboard, they weren't making any money on their pallets. It was all going into the waste stream. So we could have said to them, we'll take all your waste, and we could have immediately gotten the $10,000 that they were paying to waste management, okay? Because most of their food, or most of their waste was the food that they were throwing into the dumpster, and we're taking all that. They were also throwing their cardboard into the dumpster. We could have taken all that. We could have taken their pallets. And they started making revenue on those things. So we could have gone in and just taken everything and have had income of $25,000 a year off of those things. And we would have progressively, sold the food as fodder, gone to market with the pork. But instead, we didn't know all these things. We didn't know we could make that food go away. So we started backwards, all right? But now, we know that, for instance, we've taught them all these lessons, and they're making slowly but surely money off of some of this stuff. So the foundation, one of the foundations that supported our work, has basically said to us, we think this model should be in every city. We think we should be bringing youth at risk to work around this food in every city. And this is a great model. And so they want to sponsor it because it's something that they want to see around the nation. There's 212 of these food banks. Our research has revealed that not one of them is doing what we're doing. Nobody's opening the cans. Tell the story about the one food bank in Pittsburgh that had a device to open these cans with a crusher. What happened?
Yeah. As we've networked with all these different agencies, that peers to Care & Share, it's clear that they're dealing with the same problem. And so Pittsburgh contracted with a company that built machines, tailored, sort of assembly line types of machines, and had them build for $65,000 a big machine called a cruncher, and it had a hopper on it. It took the cans in, it punctured them, it crushed them, put the food out, or the fodder or whatever, out into a basin, and it baled all of that steel. And all that food was going into 55-gallon drums, and they had a hog farmer on the edge of town that was coming in and hauling it, but it was too much work, and it was messy, and volunteers didn't want to do it. And we're not sure if the hog farmers benefited from it. So it was a tremendous effort, but without a whole lot of process. And they scrapped the machine 2 years later for $1,100.
Oh, too bad you didn't get it.
I know, we could have used the scrap money.
Really?
No, I know what you mean, the machine. So, I mean, every time people see us opening these cans with this electric can, they're like, there must be another way. And it's true, but it's also something to do. And it needs to get done. And we get better and better at it, safer and safer at it. And you're really in touch with it. So at this phase, we're happy about it.
How much can you make in a day opening cans? You opening cans and selling the steel and making the buckets of fodder.
I can make anywhere between $110 and $135 a day if I just prioritized opening all that food and selling it to customers.
Is that with volunteer labor though?
That would, if there are two of us, I'm calculating based on there being two of us, and it being able to do that and split it.
Paying the employee. When you say compost, I mean, when I compost, I have to put a lot of green stuff in along with all my other stuff. I don't see any green here. Is there green in your compost?
Well, there's a lot of horse manure that's hot, and sometimes there's green and sometimes there's not. It's not a highly scientific process.
But there's different kinds of compost. When we want to compost for our gardens, we make sure that we got a lot of green matter.
Yeah.
But when we're composting with a lot of pasta and donuts and things like that, it's a completely different process.
And what do you do with that compost?
Well, turn it into the soil and let it break down, but it's not going straight to market.
Right.
But
Do you sell compost?
we've sold it in the past, yeah. But one of the ways to think about compost is just diverting it so it doesn't go into the landfill and mix with all that other waste that slows down the process. So, horse manure and donuts, on a 50,000-acre ranch, it's insignificant.
Yeah.
And then when you add biochar to the process, that's with charring and all those donuts and mixing that carbon. So that's where we want to go with it.
We have a lot of alpaca food if you want.
Yeah.
And that's not hot.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to wait 3 years.
I have a logistics question. First of all, is your farthest neighbor really 50,000 acres?
The piece of land that he just showed you and Rush, that's a 50,000-acre ranch.
So you don't have any complaints from your neighbors as far as the wildlife that's coming in, the rattlesnakes, and all that?
We're on the ranch. We are 4 miles from the main headquarters, so that's our closest neighbor. And our farmstead there is located in the valley, and as you can see, there's not a lot of trees. I want to say there's a lot of trees because it's so relative. There are trees. We are somewhat protected, but we don't infringe upon their business, not directly.
They like it because all the predators come to us.
But it's for
Yeah.
environmental way. And then the second question, I have to take from your pictures that El Paso County does not have any zoning requirements or building requirements or
I'm not real familiar with the zoning. As we've rented this warehouse space in a little town called Ellicott, which is in between, we've gotten in touch a little bit with what some of the zoning options are, and we're in a zoning code there in this rental that's pretty much wide open, and the definition of agricultural purpose appears pretty broad. And by the account of what our neighbors in that area do on their land, it's with would lead you to believe that you could do whatever you want. But there is research to be done around that. Out at this 50,000-acre ranch, also a bit nebulous. It's owned by the state land board, and they partner with the Nature Conservancy around it. And there's properties like that. I believe there's one in this area even. And they make a decision about what kind of use they want to have around this land as they put it into conservancy. And so they're going to have say over it too. But at this stage, we've kept to ourselves and kept this experiment in relationship with the main ranch family, and haven't asked to scale up in any way.
I have two questions. One, how are you legally set up? Are you a 501c3 or C Corp or private venture? What's the corporate structure? And the other question has to do with what are you doing about food security? Because you're taking in materials that you have no awareness of really what's in there, turning it into compost, which is good, but not all those chemicals disappear. If you're selling food that uptakes any of that, how does that food security liability chain play out?
Sure.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So what's our legal structure? What is Future Pointe's legal structure? And then how are we considering the implications of food security or food safety, given that a lot of this food product goes into the soil, and then there's new things grown on it, or it goes into the animal, and how do we consider that being transferred? Was that accurate?
More or less, because if someone, say you had people dying from something they bought that was being sold, how do you deal with that? Worst case.
Yeah. Future Pointe is structured as an L3C, and it's a form of an LLC, a limited liability company, that is new nationally, and that structure is sponsored in a handful of states across the country as a type of LLC. We're registered and incorporated in Wyoming because Colorado doesn't have legislation around L3C, and what it means is low profit limited liability company. They're experimenting with a structure that includes a social mandate or a triple bottom line ethos to it. And so it remains to be seen or proven how you are accountable to that and what it means. But we felt like it was good for us because we want to build a sustainable business that relies on its own revenue, but still want to do this work of connecting social and economic and environmental issues. To your second question, there's a lot of different versions of compost, as Philip alluded to, that we're producing. And so we're growing crops in, I'm not saying highly controlled compost batches, but things we feel really confident in or safe about. Not taking too much risk, and we're consuming it all ourselves. And the same is true with the animals, that our recipes reflect a criteria around around what goes in, what doesn't go in. And our experience has been that
well, it was food that was going to people. You know, this is stuff that sits on the grocery store shelf, so there's not much danger around the food.
The horse manure can be carried on some things too, and I'm sure you're not testing for that.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, at this scale, the considerations, and taking those things into consideration as you move forward and begin to market products and things, totally legitimate. So at this stage, it's we do, and then we have liability coverage across our farming activities that allows us to sell pork and allows us to sell vegetables.
Brendan, you want to take one more question, then you'll hang out after if other people have questions? Anyone have a question? Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, just thank you. We've been deep in this for 4 years and haven't had an opportunity to make a presentation, and so we're just thankful for the opportunity to talk about it and to start to experiment with how do you tell this story. And so it's all over the place. but it's focused on integration of these three things, and I'm just grateful for this audience and for the energy around it. So thanks for the time and for your consideration.